UN votes overwhelmingly to condemn U.S. economic embargo on Cuba for 31st straight year.
Here's a summary of the article.
United Nations. The UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly Thursday to condemn the American economic embargo of Cuba for a 31st year after its foreign minister urged, "Let Cuba live without the blockade." The American aim, Rodriguez said, is to weaken Cuba's economic life, leave its people hungry and desperate, and overthrow the government. General Assembly resolutions are not legally binding and are unenforceable, but they reflect world opinion, and the vote has given Cuba an annual stage to demonstrate the isolation of the U.S. in its decades-old efforts to isolate the Caribbean nation. Rodriguez said new sanctions were added in the waning days of the Trump administration, and he accused the Biden administration of strengthening measures to harass Cuba in the economic and financial sectors. Cuba is in the throes of what some experts have called its gravest economic crisis since the 1959 Cuban Revolution. U.S. Deputy Ambassador Paul Foamsby told the Assembly after the vote that the United States stands by its sanctions, which are one set of tools in our broader effort toward Cuba to advance democracy and promote respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. We share the Cuban people's dream of democracy in Cuba and join international partners in calling for the Cuban government to immediately release all those unjustly detained, Foamsby said.
This post received a score of 6,900, with an upvote ratio of 92%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
I hate how articles on UNGA votes don't link to the actual voting record on the UNGA website, which is so difficult to navigate. Here it is.
TLDR. Nay. US and Israel abstain. Ukraine yay. Everyone else.
Greater than yay. Everyone else FYI, that is spelled yay, e.g. yay or nay.
You're right, but why isn't nay spelled NEA then?
Nay and NEA mean the same thing. Yay and yay don't mean the same thing.
But as HEA for horses? That is hay.
And nothing is going to change for the 31st straight year. And bears continue to shit in the woods.
Except for the one that does it in my backyard. Massive.
The bear or the shit?
Inclusive or. So back in 2007 I was sent down to Gitmo as a civilian contractor for 10 days. Very strange place. This one evening, I was standing in line at the Next to buy some breakfast stuff for the next morning, and my cell phone rings. I pick it up and start talking, then very quickly realize that people are looking at me like I've grown alien antennas. I'm Canadian, and my work phone happily roamed onto the Cuban cell network. It didn't even dawn on me that would be odd.
I'm sorry, but I'm missing something. What was the odd part? It had a cell network, so I assume other people had cell phones, no?
They were American. American cell networks would not roam onto the Cuban cell network, due to sanctions etc.
We, the United Nations, condemn the U.S. economic embargo on Cuba again. Now, please welcome the chair of our Human Rights Council Social Forum, Iran.
The UN is so hilariously useless as anything other than a meeting place. They've got less teeth than a chicken. Edit, since obviously my point was missed here, what's the point of voting overwhelmingly to condemn something for 30 years in a row that will have absolutely zero impact on actual decision making? The UN isn't going to convince the US to lift the embargo the 31st time.
Greater than the UN is so hilariously useless as anything other than a meeting place. That's the entire express purpose of the UN. To keep nations talking. It's supposed to be toothless.
Some people really wish the UN was some kind of independent international military that enforced the law, but don't realize how fucking dangerous that would be.
Americans identify with their self-appointed role as the police of the world so strongly that they are shocked to find out the UN, which they consider themselves the most important part of, doesn't have the same role and desire.
I don't agree with the embargo, but nobody can force the US to conduct trade with a country it doesn't want to trade with. That is an internal, domestic decision that nobody else in the world has any say in. Before anyone says it, no, the US embargo against Cuba is not forced onto anyone else. Countries and companies are free to trade with both the US and Cuba, but they cannot use US infrastructure to facilitate trade with Cuba.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.